Hey everybody, Mattsquatch here, getting absolutely murdered by cactus. Picked a hell of a spot to stop, I guess. Where am I? I'm in Anza-Borrego State Park in California, and very busy today here. Visitor center, there's a lot of, closed trails and tourists and stuff like that. So I found a turnoff and just went down the side of the road a bit, because Anza-Borrego is not very well known. I mean, I guess if you live in Southern California, you might know about it. But this is such a place of high strangeness. There's so much weird stories out here. Now, I came here, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years ago. I went to the Wind Caves, which is way on the other side of the park. It's a series of these tunnels and caves that you can go through, and you got to wear a headlamp. I really want to go back and do that. Very cool. There's a lot of history of mining and trains, because pretty much from San Diego on the coast all the way to like Yuma, all the way to like Arizona, there used to be the Pacific Railroad used to go all the way through here. Now it doesn't anymore, but Anza-Borrego being kind of this valley, the Borrego Valley, Borrego Hot Springs, this desert area, it's kind of in reverse of most areas, where most areas in the summertime from like May till October, that's their busiest time. Well, that's the quietest time here. In fact, a lot of stuff's closed. This time of year, though, is when it's cooling down, so people are actually getting out here. You might also know it as a place of the super bloom, with all the wildflowers and that kind of stuff. Interesting spot. Now, perhaps some of you maybe heard of the Borrego Sandman, a desert version of Sasquatch. It's been seen out here for years, like hundreds of years. No, Adam Davies, a fairly well-known researcher. He's done a lot of work out here. There's also the ghost lights of Anza-Borrego, which are pretty famous. I guess the early miners actually, like, their camps would be terrorized, or in the middle of the night. I can't imagine all this cactus trying to go through here in the middle of the night. Middle of the night, they'd follow this light, and they would, what is this light? And they'd follow it, and it would lead them off a cliff, or down a gully, or lead them into danger. And these ghost lights were seen all over the place, so much so that in the late 18th century, early 19th century, they actually hired the Pinkerton Protection Agency and private investigators to come out and see what these ghost lights were that were scaring away their miners and railroad workers. And I guess one of the most outrageous things I've heard, and I don't know if it's been seen, but there used to be reports of many, many years ago of a giant 8 or 9 foot tall skeleton. What does that sound like? An 8 or 9 foot tall skeleton with a lamp in its chest, lantern. And that was one of the ghost lights. And there'd be settlers and miners and railroad workers camp for the night, and then they would see the skeleton just come out of the darkness and wander through their campsite, and they'd shoot at it and it would have no effect. And it was supposed to be the skeleton of a miner who lost his claim and was looking for it or something like that. Like I said, the Borrego Sandman, I've heard of Dogman encounters out here. It's just a place of high strangeness. A friend of mine I was visiting a few years ago, he lives kind of on the edge of like Temecula out there, kind of eastern San Diego County. And we're at his house. He lives in the middle of nowhere. And we're looking way off in the distance. You can see these dark clouds. And he's like, oh, see those dark clouds? He's like, yeah, that's Anza-Borrego. That's where all the weird shit happens. And he wasn't a paranormal guy, and it was kind of before I was into the YouTube thing, but he kind of just said, yeah, that's where, the people disappear and people see the UFOs and all that crazy shit. And he wasn't a big believer or any of that kind of stuff. It was just very matter-of-factly, oh yeah, that's Anza-Borrego. God, I have these spines on me from the cactus. Oh. Careful when you're walking out here. It's not even that you're going to walk into them, but one shoe will pick up one of these cactus burrs, and then it'll stick into the other one. These guys right here, then they dry out and you get those burrs on you. Oh man, they're terrible. But anyway, I suffer for the art form. So this was just, I had a completely different plan for today. I was going to be up in the mountains doing filming, and some trails were closed that I wanted to go to. Other ones had so much snow that there was no way I was going to get into. So I took it about an hour or so drive down the hill and ended up in the desert and kind of just wandered around. I got a rare day off. But yeah, Anza-Borrego, there's so much strange stuff that happens out here. And there's just kind of an air of, although Desert Hot Springs, there's a town kind of in the middle of the state park, which is a little bit odd. But you see kind of the rocky terrain. They have a bighorn sheep. Endangered bighorn sheep are up here. Lots of rocks. There's lots of oases, I guess, out here. Oasi, where there'll just be, you know, 110-degree heat, oppressive desert, and there'll just be these palm trees and a natural spring in the middle of nowhere. And it's such a diverse landscape. The canyon's back on the other side. This was a windy road, and I was trying to find a spot to pull off of. Anza-Borrego is a pay park, and there was a bunch of people at the visitor center and little trails, and me talking to a camera, shouting about Bigfoot and ghosts and UFOs and strange lights probably isn't conducive to the old guy RVers that are stopped there for the night. So, yeah, so here I am. This was kind of on the road back out to the 79. Interesting place. I grew up spending a lot of time in the desert in my late teens, early 20s. We would paintball, we would airsoft, we'd go shooting and exploring. That was mostly kind of north of here in the Mojave type desert. I guess this is still considered Mojave. But the Anza-Borrego Desert, very cool place, very creepy place. Some friends of mine, a friend of mine, Ed, owns an RV. If you're watching this, Ed, we need to go camping out here now that the weather's nice. We can find a more remote campground. We can go out at night, see if we can find any of these ghost lights, see if we can see any of these skeletons or any strange things. You can drive out with the RV. I'll meet you here. I want to go back to the wind caves. My wife wants to go back to the wind caves. My daughter would probably enjoy exploring it. Always go packing though. But you put on your headlamps, and when I went to the wind caves, like I said, they're way on the other side in the middle of nowhere. It was like 105 degrees outside, and you had to spend like 45 minutes driving down these dirt roads, and then you get to them, and you'd go in the cave, and it was like 70, 75 degrees in these caves, and like 100 degrees outside, and it was so nice and cool. And you'd snake your way through. Then it would come to an opening in a canyon, and it was like brutally hot, and then you go back through these caves, some of them dead-ended, some of them wide off. It wasn't too hard to get lost or anything, but that was definitely neat to go explore. And it was kind of far enough out in the middle of nowhere to where I think there was maybe one or two other people there. We'll see. The wind caves, I always called them mud caves, but I guess they're wind caves. Pretty cool. The visitor center was closed due to all the pandemic stuff. You had to pay, and you had to download an app and pay and everything. I mean, leave it to California to make this complicated. If it was $5 for the day or something, I don't even know. I just stopped in the visitor center, grabbed the map, used the restroom, and looked around. It was just crawling with people. But yeah, Borrego Springs, the town, it seems like actually kind of a really nice little retirement community out here. And it's like a town in the middle of the state park. But you just look at these badlands and these big escapes and everything, and it's a neat place, and I got to come back. But there's so many stories of high strangeness, these ghost lights, UFO sightings, the giant skeleton, the Borrego Sandman, Dogman. Remember down south in San Diego, we had the Tales of the Zoobies. We're not that far from the border. We're not that far from the Salton Sea. It's just an amazing place out here. Careful not to step any more cactus. Those things hurt like a son of a... You kind of see the valley off that way. Just goes for many, many miles. And I think that's the Salton Sea way the hell out there. See if I can zoom in. Way out there. There's El Trucco. All right, folks, I suppose that's going to do it. Consider this part one or just an interlude to all the cool stuff that's out here in Anza-Borrego. Like I said, I just pulled off the road. I'm one of those weirdos where I go to a visitor center or hiking trails and I just see a bunch of people, or, oh, this is a cool trail, and there's 4 or 5 cars parked, and I'm just like, never mind. I guess that's just what I get for living in California. There's just way too many people anywhere, everywhere. But, all right, folks, you stay safe in the deserts and the woods.